Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about Andrew Driver's White Noise, a brand new, absolutely brilliant film of 2023, best movie of the year. And spoilers for all of Andrew Driver's, Adam Driver, Kylo Ren, right? The boyfriend from Girls, Lena Dunham, brilliant actor, one of my favorite actors actually. And I wanted to talk about his film, Adam Driver's film, White Noise, and there's going to be spoilers for it in this content. Specifically, what I want to talk about is fear of death. And I want to talk about this from the perspective of Dungeons & Dragons and how we process fear of death IRL, and how we model fear of death in Dungeons & Dragons so that it reflects the IRL. All right. So one of the things, this movie is a celebration of everything an engaged 5th edition Dungeon Master, an engaged 5th edition player is, okay? Which is the most, the best prepper that's ever been created, right? I know that sounds strange, but that's what the film's meta-narrative is, in my humble opinion. All right, so let's get into this, okay? So the movie, it has a lot in it, right? So it goes through an apocalypse event, but then a good part of the movie is about Adam Driver's wife's, Adam Driver, he plays a history professor, and then his wife is essentially a yoga instructor, right? And his wife has a debilitating fear of her own death, right? And she's terrified. She's terrified of her own death, right? And Adam Driver loves her, and the two of them have all these kids together. And the oldest daughter realizes that the yoga instructor mom is taking a pill called Dilar, which is a pill that was tested and was failed by the FDA and never came out. And her mom is still taking it, right? And there's a mystery of how she's even getting it. There's a mystery of why she's taking it. We find out the mystery is she is absolutely terrified of the thought of her own death, right? And her fear of death is more powerful than her love for her family or for her husband, right? So very, very interesting discussion, right? And one of the reasons why is this movie is about intellectuals, is about modern intellectuals. And the vast majority of modern intellectuals are agnostics or atheists. And frankly, I think nowadays it's not even agnostic. They're atheists, right? And I think this is the true, and the reality is, I don't want to pretend, right? I'm an evangelical Christian. I also happen to be a modern intellectual. I'm both, which makes me kind of unusual. But I'm not going to pretend. Evangelicals are not doing as well as modern intellectuals from the perspective of all of the world's measurements, right? So modern intellectuals outpace evangelicals in education. They make more money than us. They live on the East and West Coast, and generally they're East Coast. They're coastal elites. Okay, modern intellectuals are coastal elites with lots of wealth, lots of status, and a lot of traditional success. Right. So okay, we're following you here. So wait. So where does this land? Where does this land from the perspective of, where does all this land from the perspective of the, So it would appear that coastal elites are better off than evangelical Christians, but that's completely wrong. And here's why: we don't fear death. We don't fear the death the way you do, right? You're in a modern. I'm going to talk to you as though you're a modern intellectual, because chances are you are, right? They literally call Christianity the narrow path, right? And we know we're going to be a minority. They literally call us a remnant, right? So there's not that many of us, right? And so the modern intellectuals are outpacing us in every traditional model of success. But y'all fear death, and we don't, right? And this is important because we need to think about this from a Dungeons & Dragons perspective. Let's get all the way there on the IRL, and then we'll jump over to D&D and talk about how we modify our D&D game with this truth, right? Which, in my opinion, is a new truth, in my humble opinion. So basically, once I watched this film, I realized, yeah, modern intellectuals, they crush it in every way, but they fear death. Now, I've seen this firsthand, right? In my opinion, fairly firsthand. Well, you could say if you think it's firsthand or not. But I watch every single video Grace Randolph does. She's one of the people I really respect in life. She's a complete modern intellectual. She is not spiritual in any way. I'm pretty sure she's an atheist, if not an agnostic, right? And she's crushing it, right? She's the best in her field. She has lots of money. She has good relationships with almost everybody she's in, but she has a massive fear of death, right? And I see this because I've watched her for like 5 to 10 years now, and she very carefully guards her personal life, but it just seeps through, right? Through literally 1,000 hours of content that I've watched of her, in her comments. She's terrified of death, right? And this is a real problem, right? Because the reality is, and guess what? She should be, right? Like, she's 100% right to be afraid. It's the only thing in her life that's completely wrong, right? She doesn't know where she's going when she dies. And guess what? It ain't going to be a good place, right? She has, God said, hey, I'm perfect. You're not. If you can go talk to my son, he will give you salvation. He'll cover every sin you ever did. And when I put you before the judgment throne, I won't see your life. I'll see Christ's life, which is perfect, right? And all you got to do is ask for it, right? Just ask for salvation and you get it, right? She ain't done that. In fact, she's like, Jesus, nope, don't want, right? And like every modern intellectual, y'all's done. Like, that's it. Like when whoosh, it's the hot place. That's all it is, right? That's all that's waiting for you, okay? And y'all's terrified by it, and legit you should be, right? But an evangelical, I ain't got no fear of death, right? I know it's gonna be 100 times better for me up there than here. I got no fear of death, right? And this and they talked about this in the film White Noise, that it just permeates all of your life, and it makes all those great models of success just kind of evaporate, because you're like, this is great. I got 75 years of awesome, and then I got eternity of literally HE double hockey sticks. That ain't cool, right? Like, so how does this, okay, so basically, I'll just go take the victory lap. Evangelicals, we beating y'all's. Like, we y'all's have every traditional successful model, but you're going to get eternity in hot place, man. Like, we got a better deal on the evangelical side, right? This is a better deal, right? So we defeating you there. I'm going to take the victory lap, okay? So the other thing is, and now that we see that, right, that evangelical Christians definitely have the right model of life, and all these modern intellectuals, a lot of who are 5e engaged dungeon masters and 5e engaged dungeon players, right? We got you beat, or like, and so once you realize that about IRL, you should be setting that into Dungeons & Dragons. So how do you set that into Dungeons & Dragons? One, every single cleric across the board should get advantage on all fear checks, period. Right? That's the way that it should be modeled. Because they don't have any fear. They don't need to have any fear, right? They know their relationship with their God is good, and they know that when they whoosh, right? They set, right? And everybody else is forbargled, right? Like, it ain't going to be good for them, right? So that's important to understand, okay? The other issue is realizing the cleric is the bravest person in your group, right? And your fighter, why are they going head to head? Why are they putting their life on the line all the time? Not because they're, confident that they're going to live through that. Is because not because they're like unafraid of death. It's that they're confident they're going to defeat their opponents, right? And that a strong offense is the best defense. And finally, right, I think one of the reasons why they're on the front lines and they're doing that is their function, right? And that's how they find value. And so I think they just don't think about it that often, right? And but the reality, and so they're doing it because they're confident. They're not afraid because they're confident that their skills will get them over and that their death is far down the line, right? But the reality is, without a doubt, clerics, when it comes to wizards, rogues, fighters, clerics are the most fearless by far, because they know where they're going, right? Whereas fighters are on the front lines and they actually take more risks than clerics, but the reality is it's just it's a symptom of their function, right? It's not because of their fearlessness. And so when we fear checks are very important in Dungeons and Dragons. We talk about them a lot, right? We take them very, very seriously. And so one, just realize you got a fear check right now. And I'm telling you, you should be very afraid. Very afraid. I know where I'm going, right? You live in a dope life. I know it. You an engaged 5e dungeon master, you live in a dope life, right? You eating 8,000 pages of canon for breakfast. You probably crushing in a lot of other areas of your life, right? But that's when it all ends, and it's going to be worse than you ever imagined, okay? So please, just ask Jesus for your salvation. Realize you are a sinner. Get saved, right? And it's literally all you have to do is say, I realize I'm a sinner, God. I know that I can't provide my own salvation, right? And I don't want to crush it in this life and then have an eternity of suck, right? So all you have to do is believe that Jesus saved you, right? Died to save you, and accept that salvation, right? And also just realize, I beat you in fearlessness, right? And guess what? And the fact that I beat every single one of you in fearlessness, because I do not fear death, and you do, and you have reasons to fear death, and I don't, because I chose a better life model, right? Like, which is evangelical Christianity, right? That should be modeled in Dungeons and Dragons, and that means every cleric gets advantage on fear checks. And the reality is, I might even go further, that fear checks are never necessary for a cleric because they never fear death, right? It's not a thing for them, because I know the minute for me, right, all it's going to happen is I'm going to be in a better place, and every cleric's the same way, right? So I think it's a better way to understand fear. And we focus on understanding fear through Dungeon Masters, through Dungeon Mastering, and through Dungeons and Dragons. All that, every single word of it, is my humble opinion. What's your humble opinion? Do you actually think your modern intellectual life is a better life choice than my evangelical Christianity? I'd love to hear you defend it in the comments below. Send your traffic. All that's my humble opinion. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.